Welcome to episode 73 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. Yeah, that's right. We're back. I know real life has gotten in the way, hockey, other stuff. It's just been a crazy few weeks. And honestly, there hasn't been a lot of great stuff to talk about with the Bruins anyway. So we're back. I'm your host, Ace, alongside me, as usual, my wonderful co host, Jake Reiser. Jake, how you doing, buddy?
I'm relieved. Yeah, I feel like watching the last couple of weeks of the season was the definition of insanity. Just rinse and repeat the same type of bullshit that we watched all season. So, happy we didn't have to talk about it too much, but we'll get into it now. But I'm a little bit relieved. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it came down to the wire there. I mean, it kind of hurts me in my soul to say every time I watch them play, and by them I mean the Boston Bruins. I was like, all right, how can we maximize our opportunity to get the best chance at number one overall? How can we tank even more efficiently? So they're actively playing games, and even like in the last couple of games, playing like decently well offensively compared to what they had down the stretch. And I'm getting angry each time we score a goal. I'm like, no, what are we doing here? Like, we have a great opportunity to get a guaranteed top six pick, and we're just shooting ourselves in the foot by like trying to just go out there and get a. We're just Gerard Mayoing it for real. Like it was just unbelievable.
I think at some point in the last couple of weeks, all of us had to have said, "You're ruining the tank."
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of funny though, because all of these like teams that have been bad for a while that have been praying for the Boston Bruins downfall. I mean, we've talked about this in the pod countless times that so many franchises, fans bases have just been like, oh my God, when will the Bruins lose? Like, when will they fall off? And now finally that moment that everybody's been waiting for arrives. And the interesting thing is, I honestly don't think it's going to be something that lasts too long. I think it was, and we've said this before too, it's been kind of like a perfect storm. So that's one thing I want to talk to you about on today's episode is if we maybe think that this is truly, as evidenced by the press conference that happened today. We'll talk about that later on too. Do we believe that this is truly just a one-off and they will be in the mix again next season, or if it's going to be a little bit of a longer retool than maybe what we had anticipated? So
Mhm.
uh, let's go ahead and jump in there to start off with the end of the season for the Boston Bruins. The 2024-2025 Boston Bruins season came to a end after a overtime loss to the New Jersey Devils. Just wanted to touch on some important notes regarding the end of the season there. First off, friend of the show, Morgan Geeky, is anointed the seventh player award winner. What is your initial thoughts and analysis on that pick for that trophy, Jake?
There are years like I would have said last year there were two or three candidates who stood out for it. Geeky far and away ran away with it. I think the expectations for him were not as high as he certainly achieved. I think he very much overperformed in a great measure. I maybe would have expected a 20-goal season out of him, and that would have been really satisfying. 33 goals, 24 assists for 57 points, and a +3 somehow on this team. I'll take that any day of the week. So I'm thrilled. It was very cold to start the season, but he just heated up probably about midway through the season and stayed hot and consistent the whole way through and really earned that seventh player award. It's very rightfully earned.
Yeah, I mean, usually I kind of notice that it goes toward like fourth line grinder type players, but I mean, nobody had Morgan Geeky potting it like more than 30 goals on their bingo card. I mean, if you did, like, well done, like that's very impressive. It was not definitely on my radar. I kind of thought he would be, capped at that 20 goal threshold or so. But I guess that's what happens when you're able to develop chemistry with a guy like David Pastrnak.
Yeah.
So, what can you like honestly, I want to get your take on it too, but what can you not say about the work that David Pastrnak put in toward the end of the season? And I've been on record of saying, when Marchand made his departure, there would be a void in the leadership. And I honestly thought, Charlie McAvoy would be that guy that would be, anointed as the successor based upon his conduct in the past, learning, alongside Zdeno Chara, spending as much time as he did with Patrice Bergeron and such. He always kind of seemed like he was being groomed for that successor role. But obviously, with him being injured during this time of, I mean, the most adversity either of these two guys have ever seen in a Boston Bruins uniform, it would have been easy for David Pastrnak to kind of shut things down and just go through the motions. And he did anything but that and ended up being one of the top five scorers in the regular season, which was just for this Boston Bruins team, for him to put up those numbers, that is just astronomical as far as I'm concerned.
Charlie McAvoy has to be ruining the Minnesota Wild medical staff for the fact that they took away that part of the season, because it opened up the opportunity for David Pastrnak to show up and, show the team what he was truly made of. And he did exactly what he needed to. You're right. The chemistry he developed with Geeky, the amount of, I wouldn't call it importance that he put on every game, but the amount of effort he put in every single game, regardless of the result, regardless of win losses, he pretty much put his mark on every single box score. So kudos to him for showing up in every single facet. We talked a lot about it through most of the season too, that his passing game and his
Yeah.
assist game was getting so strong. It felt almost Krejci-esque. And
Mhm.
then you watched him combine at the end of the season that he was scoring more, but he like his assist pace was still on what he was on from the beginning of the season. And that turns him into such a dangerous player. And in baseball, we talk about 5-tool players. He added such a giant tool to his belt that makes him even scarier to play against than he was before.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point. I mean, because you look back at the beginning of the season, I'm not saying that Pasta wasn't working hard or trying, but he was just looking for his shot every single time. And the book's out on David Pastrnak. Take that a one-timer away in the slot, and then if he has the puck, pressure him. And that obviously he worked with the Boston Bruins professional scouting team and said, "Hey, look at this backdoor pass. Somebody's going to be back there." And it's like it just clicked for him. And all of a sudden, he was making no look passes and finding seam passes that were never there before. And all of a sudden, you have Morgan Geekie go from a 20-goal ceiling guy to wow, he just potted 32 in the season. Like it's just staggering at the production that he was able to do. And maybe that is something to do with the coaching staff. I will commend Joe Sacco for trying to find something that works and sticking to it. Far too often, Jim Montgomery and his staff would just blend the lines, blend. It seemed like maybe if they hit a little bit of difficulty, there would be a whole new top six the very next day, and they were never really able to generate that chemistry. I mean, we learned a little bit about Elias Lindholm's struggles this year on the press conference. We're going to touch on that later, but just because it wasn't working with David Pastrnak through the first 3 weeks doesn't mean you should have removed your number one center from your number one winger. You should have
Mhm.
given that more time to marinate and to develop, and they didn't. And I do think that that was a big reason why the Boston Bruins left a lot of points on the table throughout the regular season campaign here. So Joe Sacco and his staff, they allowed Lindholm, they allowed Geeky, and they allowed Pasta to work together and really start to find it. And that line, they paid him back in spades.
Absolutely. I think it's great. You touched on it a little bit that we saw a really consistent top six down the stretch. Pasternak, Lindholm, Geeky together. Zaka, Casey Middlestat got thrown in there.
Yep.
Husnudinov got some looks, but seeing a consistent top six and letting guys find their chemistry. It was asserted today that Geeky's going to be on the roster next year, come hell or high water.
Love
They
that.
want to get this done really quickly, which I commend the Bruins for doing. Not only because it's great to address situations like this early on, but because the chemistry that he and Pasta built. You want to keep working on that for whoever the next coach of this Boston Bruins team is, and we'll get into that as well because that was heavily touched on. But credit to letting these guys develop down the line. That's one thing I'll give Sacco his dues for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff coaching related and everything a little bit later on, but we did have a wonderful previous episode. We had Shane Malloy from Hockey Prospect Radio on, and he did a wonderful draft primer. All of those things that he said are still very, very, very relevant. So make sure you go back and take a peek. I can say that it is interesting that the Bruins staff has been back and watching Caleb Desnoyers.
Yeah,
Desnoyers, I think that's
Desnoyers,
how
I
you pronounce
think.
it. Yeah, Desnoyers. And it does help that he's teammates with another Boston Bruins prospect in Loke Johansson. So there's chemistry there, which is also really cool. So it wouldn't surprise me. If just in case you weren't aware, the NHL does have a draft lottery system. So it's not just based on where you finish. Each team is going to have weighted lottery odds to secure the potential first overall pick. So the Boston Bruins finished the season fifth
Yeah,
overall, I
fifth
think.
best.
Fifth. Yep. And you cannot move down more than 2 spots. So the very worst that they can do in this upcoming draft is the 7th overall pick. Um, but they do have a chance. I think it's like something like between the first and second slot in the draft, something like a 12% chance or something along those lines. So it's not impossible. And hey, there's been plenty of times where teams far behind the Boston Bruins in this draft lottery standings have made the jump and won first overall. The biggest one that comes into mind recently is going to be the draft in which the New York Rangers jumped all the way up from 11th, I believe,
Mhm.
to first to select Alexei Lafreniere. And there was plenty of finger pointing at the league saying, hey, you wanted a big market like New York to get the first overall selection. I'll tell you what, though, you're looking at these TV ratings for this NHL playoffs. You know what a team like Boston back in the playoffs would do? I think maybe like a first overall pick for a market like Boston would be, I don't know, in the best interests of the league. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jake?
Even a top 3, because, as Shane talked about, there's no consensus top pick like a McDavid or a Matthews. Even a top 3 pick for the Bruins where you could get one of Schaefer, Higgins, or Misa, like, you win either way there. And I think you go Higgins or Misa if you're in top 3, because the Bruins need forward depth more than they need defensive depth at this point, as much as the defending has to get better. But, even just moving up a little bit could go a long ways towards getting the Bruins back to the playoffs a lot faster.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say no to Schaefer, like because I mean Schaefer, I think it's pretty well regarded around pro scouting circles that Schaefer projects to be a number one defenseman altogether.
Yeah.
Like he is going to be a number one defenseman, and as I know that's difficult to say. I mean, because hell, Owen Power was drafted first overall, and he's starting to not look like that's going to work out too well for the Buffalo Sabres. But Schaefer's got a little bit bigger size, and I think more of a two-way game than what Power did. Anyways, it'll be very fascinating. The other name that I think would be intriguing for the Bruins is Porter Martone, who's a big, rugged power forward.
Mhm.
Think of like a modern version of Tom Wilson, that type of game. And I think the Bruins could use that. And I think that a player like that kind of screams Boston Bruins. They haven't really had somebody like that since, I don't know, prime Milan Lucic.
I
So,
mean, it does, but also, do we want prime Bruin or like the Bruins mentality right now? Like, is that actually going to be successful in the modern NHL? Do we need an evolution on what it means to be a Bruin? And that's a humongous point of conversation that's going to have to happen throughout the entirety of the offseason.
yeah. So, speaking of the offseason, that was a good segue. Well done, Jake. Let's go ahead and touch on some of the news that came out after the conclusion of the season. So, it was definitely a little bit of a different vibe at breakup day for the Boston Bruins. I mean, usually for the last handful of seasons, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, that's come like on the heels of a pretty disappointing playoff loss. So, a lot of aspirations, and then it just goes poof up in the air, and everybody's kind of just standing there wondering what the hell just happened. How did this occur? The Bruins have known for basically a couple of months now that this was the end of the line. So, different mentality. Everybody was kind of just looking to just turn the page a little bit sooner, but still try to understand, from the player's perspective, where did things go wrong? How did it like go sideways so bad? Um, and usually this is when we find out, oh God, this player X had injury, this player Y was injured, and they had to, play through Patrice Bergeron's punctured lung example. Obviously, without the playoffs, there's not as much wear and tear here. But Elias Lindholm, it did come out at the beginning of the season, which explained a lot behind his slower start that we alluded to earlier, that he was playing with a back injury that he sustained during training camp. What are your thoughts on the Lindholm injury report, Jake?
It makes a lot of sense, but I don't know why you wouldn't have just addressed it. Like, I would have sacrificed, frankly, even half a season of Elias Lindholm if he would have been able to be healthy and be more productive in the course of the latter half of the season. Did he pick it up later on? Yeah, he did. But that just feels like such gross negligence on behalf of a team. Like, if this guy has an injury in camp, why on earth would you let him play through it? Unless it's something you are definitively going to be like, he can play through and it's going to heal and it's not going to affect him. It clearly affected him. It just feels really odd that nothing was even said and we didn't find out about this until now.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen, right? And I don't necessarily fault them for not like shutting him down because the Bruins mentality. We said it on this pod here. like this was as far as I could see, this was a well-built team. It was a team that could contend and, make maybe some damage in the playoffs. Obviously, that didn't happen for a myriad of reasons that we've already broken down. Um, but the mentality of the team was at the beginning of the season that we're going to try to contend. And if I'm Elias Lindholm, who just has a freshly minted contract for a significant salary cap hit, I'm taking that pressure on myself and saying, "Hey, these guys invested in me. It's time for me to invest back in my team." And no, I'm just because my back hurts, I'm still going to go out there and do my best. No, it was that the best decision in hindsight? I don't know. Probably not, especially in the grand scheme of things because they missed the playoffs anyway.
Mhm.
But I get it from the beginning of the season, the mentality that the team had organizationally at that point. The other thing that was touched on was John Beecher getting surgery. I'm not tremendously concerned about that. I think it was that Don Sweeney had mentioned it was going to be a minor procedure. Honestly, I don't even know if John Beecher will be back next year.
I don't know
What's
either,
your
but
thought?
in all honesty, it was great to hear that, frankly, most of the team had a clean bill of health. The only other thing was Pavel
Yeah.
Zacha had a non-surgical procedure.
Mhm.
So that's honestly the nicest thing to hear that, McAvoy and Lindholm seem to be recovering well enough that they'll be great for the start of training camp. Though that's probably the two biggest things. We heard a lot over the most recent couple of weeks about Charlie McAvoy's infection and what actually happened. And man, is that absolutely terrifying what happened to McAvoy. That is so scary to wake up with your arm and shoulder in debilitating pain and see the red streaks radiating down and to be rushed off of. And Biz was like, if you didn't come in, you would have been like in dire danger. Like, that's so scary. And so to hear that he's okay, to hear that Hammer's okay, because they're going to need his defensive presence on the blue line come next season.
Yeah.
Um, it, you know, I'm okay with it just being Beecher and Zaka and nothing else.
Yeah, and I think like it wasn't even just having to get antibiotics and going home. Like he literally had to have like a pick tube put into his shoulder so they could drain and inject antibiotics into the area. Like it was a staph infection for God's sakes. Like that is some serious stuff. And like he was saying that he couldn't necessarily nobody knew exactly how it happened. Like it could have been from the pain killing shot, it could have been from something in the hotel room, it could have been a million of different things. So I mean, I think he was quoted as saying that obviously he did everything he could to get into that game to play against Canada because he sustained the injury against Finland. So he went out there, got his painkiller shots, made sure he could play against Canada. Honestly, that was the best Charlie McAvoy I have seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was prime Charlie McAvoy. I was so excited seeing him play that game. Like he was on display for the entire league. He destroys Connor McDavid with a beautiful hit. It was just fantastic stuff. And then he goes down and we don't see him again for the rest of the season. It was really a downer for the Boston Bruins. And I think it must have been, if it was for us, it must have been amplified exponentially for Charlie McAvoy himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully he's back. Whether he's got the A or the C next to him, who knows? But he should be. Hopefully he's back and in great shape come August, September.
Yeah. And thank goodness. I mean, that'll tie into what we also want to talk about after this in the presser. But other Boston Bruins news with the offseason underway here. Um, we aren't usually, aware of the world's championships because our players are still in the playoffs, right? We don't usually need to worry
Hmm.
about this. Usually you see basically all of Buffalo go and play in this tournament on an annual basis. Um, but this year, it's the Bruins that are going to go be well represented in some international hockey. And it's going to be a good primer for some of these guys that are trying to build their resume for the upcoming Winter Olympics. So David Pastrnak and Jacob Lauko, I think it's Jacob Lauko's first time representing Team Czechia since the World Juniors. So he's going to go play in the World Championships alongside David Pastrnak. That's super exciting. Congratulations to Jacob Lauko. On Team USA, the Bruins have 3 members. Jeremy Swayman, we have Mason Lohrei, which is exciting for Mace, and Andrew Peak as well. All 3 of those guys are going to go play for Team USA over in the Worlds. And then finally, the last member of the Bruins to go and play in the Worlds is going to be the Swede Elias Lindholm. So gives you a little bit of Boston Bruins related hockey to watch during the days here. I believe it's over in Scandinavia somewhere. Do you know
I
where the
think
Worlds are
so.
occurring?
I don't know. Let's find this out really quickly.
I think I saw Denmark, maybe.
That would sound about right. Stockholm, Sweden, and Herning, Denmark.
Ah, I was half right. Excellent. Okay. Well, it makes sense that Lindholm will want to go play on literally home ice there for him.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on Worlds for you?
We got a taste of it in the Four Nations that, as much as playing for the NHL is an amazing opportunity, especially for these European guys, but now really for these USA guys, representing your country on the front of your chest is so important and so powerful. So those guys should feel proud of what they're hopefully able to accomplish in the World Championships. And I'm intrigued to see what this type of conditioning does for their offseason. Maybe they come into training camp, maybe they come into the beginning of next season a little more well conditioned, having played further down the line than getting a couple of months rest. As much as the rest may help, it's gonna be it's a couple of weeks that they'll be able to work on conditioning and finishing everything off, but they'll have a lot of rest afterwards. We'll see how that affects them going down the line.
Yeah, maybe Jeremy Swayman will remember how to stop a puck for next season after this. That'll be very intriguing to see.
Well, we got some comments on that today.
Oh, yes, we did. So speaking of today,
It's Wednesday, by the way, as we record this.
yeah, it is Wednesday. We had that presser that was given by Charlie Jacobs, CEO, and he's the de facto owner. Jeremy Jacobs doesn't do anything anymore. I mean, that guy's like ancient at this point. So Charlie Jacobs, the ownership. We have Cam Neely, president, and Don Sweeney, general manager, that were addressing the media at TD Garden for the end of season press conference. The big thing that was kind of a note for me, takeaway wise, was the fact that Charlie Jacobs basically said, "Oh, I'm a fan too. I really understand your pain and frustration, and it's not acceptable." But it kind of seems to be acceptable because you're still leaving those two guys at the desk with you.
Mm-hmm. If you took the first part of that press conference out of context, if you listened to that first speech, you'd be really empowered as a Bruins fan. We're taking accountability. I'm really embarrassed as to how this whole season went down. But putting it in the context of how the rest of the afternoon went, it just felt so hypocritical. I think they got extremely defensive. I'll give high credit to the media for poking a lot of holes and kind of poking the bear. Don't mean to make the biggest pun there, but they really poked the bear and tried to ask the tough questions. And I think watching how snippy and how defensive they all got up on the podium, I think Don and Cam kind of defeated the purpose of what Charlie was trying to say in the beginning of the conference. So it definitely, by the end of it, I was feeling embarrassed. I hope that there's a good plan in place, but it did not inspire a lot of confidence that there is.
No, and I think I do think that Ty Anderson kind of encapsulated it well. He's like, this press conference is not enjoyable if you were a fan of this team. It is not good.
The bad times keep on rolling.
I do think that it was made abundantly clear that this is it. Like, if the Bruins miss the postseason next season, Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, at least Don Sweeney. I don't know. It seems like Charlie Jacobs is rather fond of Cam Neely being that buffer between him and the fan base.
But you probably have to put like a filter between Cam and the GM. Like, give the GM much more autonomy than what the relationship that Cam and Don have together.
Yeah, it's not good. But I mean, I think Don said a lot of the right things. And what really is my biggest takeaway, which is kind of funny, was that Don Sweeney is a very eloquent speaker, and he knows how to articulate his thoughts. And I can sit down and kind of hear what he's saying, and I can empathize. I can understand where he's coming from, and I can kind of see where his vision is. And then the other two guys speak, and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is going on here? Like, Cam Neely just gets angry when he gets questions. He looks like he wants to go up to his office in the Verizon Tower on the 25th floor and punch out a wall. Especially when Kevin Paul DuPont asks Charlie Jacobs about ticket prices. Like, oh my goodness, like, what is this guy doing? Like, you're not an enforcer in the NHL anymore. You've been retired for like 20 years, big guy. Like, let's cool your jets down. You have to be a fully functional member of society. Like, this is not going to be, sustainable for you. It can't be good for your health.
It's like he's back to playing Seabass and Dumb and Dumber again.
I know, it's ridiculous. But yeah, that was the big thing, is that was said that accountability is at an all-time high Um, we'll see.
If
Actions speak
accountability was
louder
at
than
an
words.
all-time high, Cam and Don wouldn't be here. So that's a crock of shit to me, in all honesty.
I am inclined to agree. The first kind of statement that actually had some merit to it and wasn't kind of like them just sniffing their own farts and telling us it smelled wonderful was the fact that they confirmed that a full coaching search is going to be occurring again. There was a lot of references to the previous coaching search, which I thought was kind of interesting as well, because I wasn't necessarily pleased with the way that that one went down either.
Mhm.
Especially with them kind of floating out in the public to see, and this isn't confirmed, it's my speculation, but it was highly speculated that the Bruins were leaning going David Quinn,
Mhm.
and they floated that it was going to potentially happen to a few sources that leaked, and then they saw the vitriol and the blowback from the fan base, and they're like, oh, on second thought, Jim Montgomery. So I don't really like the way that the Bruins front office handled that last coaching search, and I'm kind of nervous that they're going to be making a few phone calls to some contacts that went pretty far into the process last time. So, um, one thing that was of note, I did write an article and I talked about it before on the episode that I thought David Carl would be a great fit for the coaching role for the Boston Bruins. I kind of did a little bit more research and I've learned that that's most likely not going to happen. And
Mhm.
that's simply because of his relationship with Jim Montgomery. Obviously, he learned underneath Monty at Denver University, and it's no secret that Monty probably isn't as fond of the Bruins, and the Bruins aren't very fond of Monty. So I don't think that's going to be happening.
I mean, the other quote that was also mentioned in regard to the coaching search is that Sweeney says he wants some form of NHL exposure in their eventual hire. And that would kind of take it out for me, as much as Carl seems to be doing a prolific job at the college level and producing NHL level talent at Denver. He doesn't exactly have the exposure that I guess seems to be a piece of criteria for the next head coach, which leads me to two candidates that I've mentioned all season that would be extremely high on my list. One being Jay Pandolfo, who's been on the Bruins bench before, who did some fantastic things at BU over the last 3 years. He's made the Frozen Four every single year he's been BU head coach. As much as the first 2 years he didn't get past the semifinals, and this year they lost in the finals to Western Michigan, who were just an absolute powerhouse throughout the Frozen Four and through the playoffs overall. But his system, he knows the Bruin system, he knows how they work, he knows how they operate.
Hmm.
He'd be a really interesting pick, especially because he's working with some of the best offensive talent to ostensibly come into the NHL. Macklin Celebrini, Cole Iserman. Eventually, he'll get to the NHL. He's going to stay another year at BU. But he's worked with high level talent. You can see that they're doing well at the NHL level. My other pick was Marco Sturm, who was on the
Mm.
bench with the LA Kings for a couple of seasons and has been the head coach of the Ontario Reign in the NHL or the AHL for a few years. The Reign had a phenomenal season. They're in the Calder Cup playoffs right now. In fact, the PBs are actually playing Springfield right now. Game 1 is free. I know people are probably watching as we're recording, but I think Sturm knows the organization again. It's been a while since he's been a Bruin and been around the team, but he's got the NHL exposure. He's got the high level prospect developing talent on the AHL side, watching
Yeah.
Quentin Byfield, Brendan Clark, all those guys on the Kings who are young and have finally come up and are contributing now to a much younger Kings core than say 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
Sturm might even peak a little more over Pandolfo for me just because of that. But I see those two guys as extremely high on my list. And if they revert, there's a lot of vacancies this year. There's Anaheim, Boston, Philly, the Rangers, Vancouver, possibly because somehow they're not renewing Rick Tocchet, or they're basically putting it in his court to say, I want to come back or not. There's a lot of vacancies, which means there's a lot of names flying around. And if they run to a David Quinn, to a Mike Sullivan, to a Peter Laviolette, to a John Tortorella, I'd be extremely disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, that's my biggest thing is that I said before, I don't want an NHL rehash. I mean, you've seen the Rangers go rehash of all rehashes. The speculation that's come out tonight, I don't know if you've seen this yet, Jake, that John Tortorella will be returning to the Rangers bench.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, that was some
Oh.
speculation that came out today that um I hold on, I'll get you the actual report. It's nothing confirmed yet, but the report was from Sammy Silber, who does, I believe that they're a Capitals
Yeah,
beat
Capitals beat
reporter
reporter for the Hockey News, but they
for
are
the
part of the
Hockey
AP
News.
and the PWHI or
Yeah,
PHWI,
are
pardon me.
credible. And she had mentioned that she had heard that from some Rangers sources or from some Flyer sources that he is going to be going back to the New York Rangers. Like,
So
it's one
Arthur
thing to
Staple chimed in also and said that that's incorrect, but
alright. Well, that's interesting. Anyway, something to keep an eye on, which would be very, very humorous. Definitely a name that I saw a lot of people like, oh, Bruins should be reaching out on Torts. And I was like, oh my God, no. Like, for what this team needs, that is the last guy that they need to bring in right now. And then again, I think Babcock would be the last guy they need to bring in. So Torts would be a little bit higher
Joe
on my list.
Quenneville might also be on that
Oh,
list too.
yes, also on my never, never, please God, no list.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and send it over to our sponsors for a quick moment here?
This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love.
All right, and we are back. So to just kind of touch on more about that coaching search, what was kind of interesting to me is that Don Sweeney had mentioned that Sacco will be involved in the final stage of the coaching search for an interview. Personally, I hope that's just an exit interview. Thank you for your service. You've been a great employee. Like, wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. But I did find that kind of interesting. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I get it. The last half of the season where he was the interim was pretty much his first round interview. And so I guess for fairness' sake, they have to include him in the final stages. But you're right. I don't think that the end of the season went well enough for me to say, okay, I see the rumblings of what could be a great head coaching hire in Sacco. I think that they, aside from Pasta and Geeky, a lot of them went through the motions, and I just didn't see anything inspiring. I'd clear out most of that bench if I'm going to be honest. Chris Kelly, Jay Leach, I'd clear out most of that bench and start fresh, new systems. The only people I wouldn't clear is the video coaches. Those video coaches are probably the best in the league. Yeah, I would keep them at whatever cost necessary. The amount of conversions on challenges I saw from the Bruins, I've seen from them over the last couple of years because of the video team, is tremendous. So keep them at all costs, but I'd clear house most of the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think that I would like to keep Chris Kelly, but not as an assistant coach. I would like to see him transition into more of a like player development type role, like an Adam McQuaid for forwards.
Yeah.
So have him work with Quater. Quater focuses on the D-men. Kelly works on the centers and the forwards. Like, let's work with some. We have so many prospective centers in the system here. Work on shoring them up defensively, because that is where you excelled as a center, Chris Kelly, was being in your defensive zone and being able to suppress the offense for the other team. That's really where the Boston Bruins need the most help. So I think that would be a great way to keep him involved. And it's also a way to keep, a player with some Bruins legacy in the room too, and continue that bridge. It was also confirmed that Zdeno Chara is still maintaining a role in helping guide these leaders. Now, obviously, he's not in a room. He's not a coach. He's not, an official like manager or anything like that, but he's basically being a leadership consultant for McAvoy and Pasternak. So that'll be kind of interesting to keep an eye on too. Also makes me wonder if maybe he's kind of getting groomed for a future managerial opportunity. Maybe that's a guy that the Jacobs have an eye on for, well, if Donnie doesn't work out, the guy that knows 14 and a half languages might just be a good general manager candidate.
I mean, he's got the temperament for it. I feel like he's got the smarts for it. Um, it'd be intriguing to say the least. I don't know if I'd say I'd love it wholeheartedly because why rehash players going into management roles for some reason? But you know what? I love Z. If it's something he wants to aspire to, all power to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what else do we got here? The question that was directed toward Cam about the Boston Bruins draft efficiency. And specifically, I don't even think the question focused on 2015. I think Cam just
He
summoned
honed in on
the
that.
subject
Yeah.
of 2015, because it's no secret everyone shits on the Boston Bruins for the 2015 draft, and that is, completely deserved. They fumbled it so hard. It was confirmed again in today's press conference that the Bruins were actively trying to move up, and everyone knows that was to get Noah Hannafin. They really wanted to move up to get the local kid defender Noah Hannafin, and unfortunately, they just couldn't make it work. So Cam Neely basically alluded to the fact today that Don Sweeney, who was hired in May, so basically, he had a month and a half to work of runway, that he wasn't prepared. It wasn't fair to him to really hold him accountable, which is the theme of the day, uh, on the performance of that draft. And yeah, we could have done things differently. We should have done things differently, but we didn't. Um, what were your thoughts on the whole draft pick conversation at today's presser, Jake?
So it's a yes and a no for me. That yes, I don't think they're as efficient as they should have been, and they haven't. That 2015. There's a couple. Of Lysell looks to be a miss for me. When they pick in the first round, they're not hitting on the right talent. But they've found diamonds in the rough later on when you kind of get those like lottery tickets. Um, Mason Lowry, who they grabbed in the second round. I'm trying to think of who else. They hit Dan Blochmelis is playing for Providence and is looking really good already. They just hit later on. Patra, Carlos, Swayman, Ryan Lindgren has developed not in the Bruin system, but he's turned into a decent enough NHL player. So like they hit lower on. It feels like just when the spotlight's on them to make the flashy pick, they can't do it.
And I mean, they haven't really had a pick in a place to make a flashy selection. I mean, obviously, Dean Letourneau was their first round pick from last year. And I do believe that, I mean, I think this has been probably reported from a few different people, and Shane Molloy also said something similar that maybe he went to college a little sooner than he should have.
Yeah.
Probably should have gone to like a USHL or something like that to develop another year, because he was playing really low minutes and he never was really able to get the offensive reps that he probably should. He wasn't ever going to see the power play
No.
on BC. That was way too deep of a team for him to see the power play. Going and being the guy at a USHL team would probably be much better for him than being a depth role player on Boston College. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of curve changes a little bit. But even then, he was a late first rounder. He wasn't even like a top 10 pick. The Bruins haven't picked in the top 5 since Tyler Seguin.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't even our natural selection. It was in the Phil Kessel deal. So that tells you how long it's been since they've been in this area of the draft.
And granted, they did hit on Charlie McAvoy at 14 in the 2016 draft when Dante Fabro was sitting right there as another equally attractive defensive prospect. And look at where he is now. Got cut by Nashville. And, as much as the Blue Jackets had a really good season, it's not Charlie McAvoy level. It's just not.
Nope. And he is a pending UFA, by the way, Dante Fabro. I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
Yep. Pending UFA, which would be an interesting thing to take a flyer on as far as I'm concerned.
Well, so is Henry Yokiharu, who admitted he would like to be back in Boston despite clearing out his locker a day early.
I think it was heavily alluded to in today's conference that he will not be back. I think that's what I read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's one thing to want to come back to Boston. It's another thing if Boston wants you to come back to Boston.
Yeah.
That kind of is important. Some other notes that was kind of funny. I don't know if you didn't know this, but Charlie Jacobs is not exactly a world beater on the public speaking side of things. There's a reason why he needed a script for the beginning of that conference. If you get a second, Jake, if you haven't watched this before, go back to the draft announcement. Speaking of drafting Charlie McAvoy, when the Boston Bruins drafted Charlie McAvoy, Charlie Jacobs was the guy that went on the stage and made that pick. And that was some of the most secondhand embarrassment I have ever gotten for somebody when he got up. He got like such bad stage fright, like worse than what I've seen in like a 5-year-old's dance recital. And it was just abysmal. So that was definitely pretty interesting. And then especially when Kevin Paul Dupont looks at him and says, "Hey, this question is for Charlie. Uh, why are you going to be increasing season ticket prices by 4% for next year if you just deemed the entire performance of your team, unacceptable and embarrassing?" And Charlie Jacobs just choked up and he sounded like a seized engine for a second there. He had no good way of answering it. No good way of answering it. What were your thoughts on the ticket price question, Jake?
As someone who genuinely has a master's degree in sports business, I understand the business reasons behind it. As a fan of the team, it's such a bad optics look, and it's something that Charlie should have prepared to answer for. I think that with how angsty and impatient our fan base is, it extends to the media, and they should have known this was going to be a hard-hitting press conference, and Charlie should have prepared for that, and clearly did not. And so, um, it's just frustrating to see how out of touch these guys can be. Like, I get the economics behind it. Mentally, I understand it. It just feels so wrong after the results of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the things that he said as explanations for the reasons why, I'm like, come on, man. Like, oh, the parking attendants, you have to give them raises. You're already charging $50 per parking spot underneath the garden. Like, that's the most expensive parking I've ever seen in the league. I don't know if any
Mhm.
other places charge as much for parking in the entire National Hockey League. Like, I understand it costs a lot of money, but you also are. It's not like you're bringing in an external concessions company, Charlie.
Right.
Your business is literally running concessions in TD Garden. So like you control how much you charge yourself. Like that's some of the mind-boggling stuff here that I just don't understand. But you'd know more about it with the economic side of things. And he's right. The economy has shifted. Like things are more expensive right now. There's a reason why I have to go spend another $50 every time I go to the grocery store right now than what I did maybe a year and a half ago. It is inflation, but it's also what happens if you put out another crappy product and suddenly those tickets don't sell as well as you thought they did.
Exactly.
Like,
You are not going to see 17,565 or whatever, or 17,800, whatever the new attendance number is. You're not going to see that at the Garden next season. You're just not, if it's not a good product. And that's what worries me. They've got what, a little over under $28 million to work with right now. It's humongous. And they're going to re-sign Morgan Geekie and then go from there. And we saw what they did last offseason and how it worked out. Are they gonna do the same this season, just throw money at the wind and hope that it works? As much as we were excited about Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov, a lot of people called it overrated and overinflated, and they were right after year one. Hopefully those guys step up for year two, but the whole thing just did not inspire confidence that $28 million is gonna be spent properly, and that worries the crap out of me. And if it's not, you're not gonna see butts and seats.
well, I mean, some of it's got to go to Morgan Geeky, and I think that number probably starts with a 5. That was
Yep.
already confirmed that he's going to be back. So that leaves you with what, 23 million.
Mhm.
Um, they said that they want to address scoring on the wing. Who's the scorer on the wing that you want to address? Mitch Marner? That's going to cost like 13 to 15 mil. And
Mhm.
you still have a bunch of other slots you have to fill. Like if you don't go with Marner, who's a cheaper option? Maybe Brock Besser. That really a guy that you think really moves the needle on the wing spot there in the top 6? Maybe. I mean, he's a 30 goal scorer. He's got some chemistry with McAvoy with his Team USA
And he
time
might
back in the
just be a
day.
change of
But
scenery guy too with what's been going on in Vancouver, but
yeah,
it's not as
perhaps.
big a needle mover as, other moves that could be made. You're not wrong.
Yeah, but so that's the big thing to kind of keep an eye on as well is that they basically alluded to they need more scoring in the top 6, whether that comes for free agency, from trade, whatever. One thing that I thought was also kind of interesting in this, and there was no outright names mentioned, but Mick Colagio, I believe that's how you say Mick's last
Mhm.
name, he was basically alluding to Don Sweeney. I was like, are you maybe planning on saving some of that cap space for 2026? And there was a lot of speculation that makes very kind of a roundabout hinting at a certain Jack Eichel that would be
Mhm.
a unrestricted free agent, local kid. That would be awesome. I mean, Jack's already gone out in a radio interview a couple seasons back and said, "I would love to play for the Boston Bruins, but before I retire." So
And
who knows?
he's a player that instantly ticks the needle, not just as like, oh, he's a local kid. He's one of the most talented players in the NHL, bar none. When he puts in the work ethic, as much as that can be sometimes a concern, when he puts in the work ethic, man, is he an incredible player to watch. That would be insane to see, but who knows? Things are going well enough
Yeah,
in Vegas for him.
yeah. I mean, who can complain about Nevada? I mean, you're not going to have there's no state income tax. There's
Mhm.
nice weather year round if you like that type of weather. I myself enjoy trees, so Vegas is not really necessarily my cup of tea for long term. But hey, maybe it is for just a hockey season during the winter, and then you go back home to Mass in the summer and enjoy the summer up in New England. But
Yeah.
that would be definitely an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on. I mean, Don Sweeney came up and answered that question was like, hey, nothing's off the table. We're open. Basically a non-answer to that question
Mhm.
specifically. But that was kind of interesting. Um, any other thoughts on the presser before we wrap that up, Jake?
Just ugly and not confidence inspiring, you know? I hope they put their money where their mouth is and put their brains in their heads and not up their asses and actually do smart things this offseason. They've got a huge opportunity. We've talked about this now multiple times that it's almost the most ideal time to tank with the way everything's going, with the cap going up, with where they're drafting, with the type of draft that they can have this year, the amount of draft capital that they've got in the next couple of years. I'm keeping my eye on Marchand in the playoffs to see how much he plays and whether that 2027 second round pick slides to a 2028 first. So um, they've got a lot of options that they can run with here. I just hope they do a lot of the right things. And that didn't
Yeah.
inspire confidence in me that they will.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Haven't had a lot of time myself to watch playoff hockey around the NHL right now. Any thoughts on the series that you've been able to keep an eye on so far?
Ovechkin only scoring his first career playoff overtime goal this year, this far into his career, is kind of surprising.
Oh, I
But
didn't know that. That
he
is
just,
crazy.
yeah, he's just gonna Iron Man his way through every single thing you could possibly do as an NHL player. That series is fun. The Dallas series, all of these series are really well crafted. Um,
Except for
I honestly don't
Carolina,
have
New
complaints with
Jersey.
any of them. The Battle of Florida, the Battle of Ontario. I'm so annoyed at the Battle of Ontario that um, Max Domi scored in overtime to give the Maple Leafs a 2-0 lead. I was so hoping that they would go back to Ottawa tied at 1-1. Um, the Vegas series is actually on an even plane. The Kings might look like they can get over the hill of the Oilers in the first round this time because they've been playing now the fourth year in a row. It's been actually really good enough hockey to watch. And the other big story is tonight, Gabe Landeskog seems to be making his return to the Colorado
Mm,
Avalanche lineup for the first time since he hoisted the cup in 2022. That's almost 3 years. So that's an insane storyline to follow for them and just gives the Avalanche even more depth to work with in their series going forward.
yeah, I hope he's going to be able to keep up with the pace for sure. I mean, going 3 years without playing an NHL game, that is, I don't know when the last time that's happened and somebody's made a comeback like that. So very, very inspiring stuff from Gabe Landeskog, and it's got to be cool to have your captain back out there on the ice again after such a long hiatus. And good on the Avs for not stripping that C of a guy that looks like he may not have a tangible return and giving it to like a Nathan McKinnon or a Kale McCarr, who are both obviously deserving candidates in their own right. I think my stinker playoff series so far, I kind of alluded to it while you were talking, was the Carolina and
Mhm.
the oh my
Devils.
god, you just had an empty net and you missed. Sorry, I'm watching a Providence playoff game right now. Yeah, the Devils and Hurricanes one. The Devils just look so shorthanded and battered down. And not that I think Jack Hughes necessarily is a playoff style guy. I mean, you saw him kind of dry up in the Four Nations when
Mhm.
things got tight against top tier players. But I think, as Jack Hughes goes, so go the Devils. And without Jack Hughes, there's not a lot going on there for the Devils. So that's my series. It's kind of been a little bit of a stinker from what I have been able to watch. I'm also thoroughly enjoying Jim Montgomery lose in the first round.
A little bit of
Um,
Schadenfreude.
yeah. What does he do? What are you thinking, dude? It's a playoff game with like a minute and a half left, and you're caught on camera singing on the bench.
Hmm.
Like, come on, man. You got to know that. Like, I get it. It's a catchy song, but the optics of that, like, sing when you're winning. Like,
Yeah.
you should probably be calculating some shit right now on how to cook something up good here. Um, the other
I
note
mean,
that I would
granted,
say,
though, he's in the playoffs and the Bruins are not. So I take of that as we
true,
can.
true. The other thing is that I wanted to note is playoff Linus Allmark actually a problem? Is that a confirmed thing now?
It's looking like it. As much as I don't want to give him blame for that overtime goal, it's looking like it's a little bit of a problem.
That game one was an abysmal performance from Linus
Yep.
Allmark against the Leafs. Now, granted, I'm going to say that the Ottawa Senators were a little porous defensively. I mean, giving up that breakaway goal to Mitch Marner. Mitchie's got some of the best hands in the entire league. That's not on you, Linus,
Yeah.
but you can't give up 4 goals on 10 shots, regardless
No.
of shot quality.
No,
So,
you just can't.
yeah. So I really hope that Linus turns it around and the Senators can crawl back and make this a little bit of an interesting series. On the other hand, maybe this is truly the Leafs' year. What is it going to take for the Leafs to go all the way and win a cup? It's going to take the Boston Bruins not being in a postseason to stop them.
Hmm. Their
Daddy's not in
demon
the
is not
room,
there to slay them.
right? Daddy's not in the room. You
Yep.
can do whatever you need to unsupervised because Dad can't. We're not going to be here to correct you. So, but yeah, we'll just so you guys know, listeners, we're going to transition to a little bit more of a we're planning bi-weekly. That may turn into every 3 weeks. That may turn into once a month, depending on how dry the news is. But we'll play it by ear. Make sure you are keeping an eye on your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, your YouTube, because as soon as a new episode is posted, you'll get a notification there. We are going to have some fun stuff to talk about this summer. We've been invited by the team again to attend the development camp in person during the week of July 1st. Unfortunately, I myself am not going to be able to attend. I'm going on a very exciting family vacation to Ireland, which we're very, very eager to go to. But much like what we did last summer, where I had Army Bear join me in person, where we recorded live at the season ticket holders brunch event. We are going to be doing that again. Jake, you are going to be hosting that. And I believe you have a co-host in mind already.
I do, but I'll wait till we have further confirmation to announce it. I
Excellent.
think you guys will like it.
Excellent. So then we do have confirmation from the Boston Bruins that we will be having some interviews that are going to be occurring during this as well. So fingers crossed that the Bruins can, bring in a really top tier, personable fella in the draft here, and we can maybe have them interviewed live on the Two Pad Stack during this episode this summer too. So stay tuned. We're going to have some fun news on that front coming up next. Any concluding thoughts before we wrap up the episode, Jake?
I'm glad the season's over. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm just really nervous for it all. I think that pretty much encapsulates my thoughts.
Fair enough. Yeah, it is. Spend your time on what is it? It's not Cap Geek anymore. What the hell is it now?
Puckpedia.
Puckpedia. Yeah, the Puckpedia armchair GM stuff is a lot of fun to do. I built my own custom roster already a little bit there that included Nikolai Ehlers coming to Boston, who's another one of those top 6 wingers that could potentially be good. So have some fun on that. Spend some time on Tankathon, run some mock drafts there too. We'll catch you guys when we're back in the seats here on the Two Pad Stack. As always, thank you very much for your listenership. We appreciate you. We're going to have some fun content this offseason, and we'll catch you next time.
And go touch some grass. Go enjoy the warm weather.
Yeah, go touch some grass, guys. All right. Bye, guys.